Yesterday, the U.S. Senate backed Donald Trump's war on Iran, or at least refused to stop it by rejecting a war powers resolution, largely along party lines. That party line vote was somewhat surprising as the war has divided Donald Trump's Republican Party and even the MAGA movement over the last 6 days or so. Well, I'm joined now by Simon Marks, Washington correspondent and president of Feature Story News. Simon, great to have you back on the show. Only one Republican senator joined with Democrats supporting this war powers resolution that would have limited Trump's war on Iran. Was that surprising?
Well, I think it's not surprising, Chris. I think it was pretty much baked in because the president, any president, after they go to war, and of course this president and his administration say they haven't gone to war, they're engaged in major combat operations. But to all intents and purposes, everybody knows this is a war, and indeed the president slipped a few times yesterday and referred to it as a war. But every president can always use the bully pulpit of the presidency, at least in any conflict's opening stages, to sort of demand backing. And President Trump certainly secured that in the Senate. The vote was 53 to 47. One Republican switched sides. That was Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Always a no vote when it comes to military action. He's a libertarian Republican. But one Democrat also switched sides. John Fetterman of Pennsylvania, who's very controversial within his own party. So they both cancelled each other out, and that's why you ended up with that 53-47 vote, which certainly over the short term gives President Trump the green light to go ahead and do whatever he wants to do without consulting Congress, even though Democrats are going to continue stamping their feet over that and saying that he is in breach of the war powers resolution that on paper would suggest that he requires at least consultation before these sort of major combat operations take place, and possibly even votes.
Well, Simon, you do say, as you say, this is short term. It's, of course, possible that the Senate comes back to that. But the fact that Republicans backed it at this point, yes, Donald Trump has his bully pulpit. Yes, we are in the early days of the war. Nonetheless, given the controversy around the war, even within the Republican Party, even within Donald Trump's MAGA movement, is there a possibility that Republicans will come to regret backing this war given its unpopularity?
Well, over time, yes, there's no question about that. And for many of those Republicans, the vote was, of course, a gamble. But they're very cognizant of the dangers of crossing President Donald Trump, even at a time when he is being assailed with criticism by members of his own Make America Great Again, America First support groups, including prominent influencers. But equally, those members of the Senate who've backed this, many of them, of course, have significant military communities within their own states, families whose sons and daughters are putting their lives on the line in this conflict. And so for them to cross this president and disapprove of this conflict at this early stage, even if behind the scenes they're talking to one another about an extraordinary set of circumstances in which we were told yesterday by the White House that America had essentially gone to war based on a president's feeling about what Iran might be going to do, does not obviate the sense that Republicans have that for the moment they've got to carry on backing him.
And what about the length argument here, Simon? I mean, Donald Trump is claiming, as we heard at the top, a lot of success here. He said we're ahead of schedule, but he's also said this could go on for quite a long time, maybe even beyond the 3, 4, 5 weeks that was initially baked in. Do you get the sense that Republicans might get wary as it goes on longer? Might the Senate even come back and be willing to back some sort of war powers resolution down the line?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely possible. I will say that successive American presidents have taken similar positions with regard to the War Powers Act, and successive American presidents have also faced sort of grumbling from Capitol Hill, but then inaction in the past. But the longer this goes on, there's no question the greater the risk to the president. And they have been, the administration, all over the map, Chris, on the duration of this. At times we get told things are moving ahead of schedule. The president yesterday saying on a scale of 1 to 10, he rates this a 15. Then we hear that the original plan was potentially for 4 or 5 weeks. Yesterday, the Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, said that the conflict could go on for 4 weeks. It could go on for 6 weeks. It could go on for 8 weeks. It could go on for 3. So if you're a lawmaker, never mind a military family, hearing this kind of all over the map spitballing by the administration about how long this military engagement is going to continue, it has to be very worrying.
Well, and Simon, speaking of all over the map, it's not only the timeline of this, but also the justification that, frankly, has been all over the map. There's even reports, as I understand, in the military that some commanders are invoking a sort of end-of-times biblical rhetoric that some other soldiers are complaining about. I mean, is that a sign that everyone at this point is perhaps just almost filling in the blanks when it comes to justifications?
Well, the sands of shift constantly with regard to the justification that the administration is offering, including claims, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, that are specious, that Iran was 2 weeks away from developing a nuclear weapon, and that the United States was in imminent threat of some kind of an Iranian attack. With regard to that sort of religious instruction that some troops say they are receiving, there's an organization here called the Military Religious Freedom Foundation. And as its name suggests, it collects information from members of the military who are concerned that America's constitutional separation of church and state is often breached by military commanders. And scores of them, since the conflict began, have been in touch with the Military Religious Freedom Foundation to say precisely that some of their commanding officers have been saying that this is an effort to prevent Armageddon, biblical Armageddon, from taking place, that this is biblically inspired military action by the President of the United States. And indeed, Pete Hegseth earlier in the week said that he was praying for the biblical vision to make sure that American forces win what is, of course, a war against a theocracy. And those complaints that are pouring into the Military Religious Freedom Foundation are gathering some attention now on Capitol Hill.
Simon Marks, Washington correspondent, president of Feature Story News.